Sarah Fraser from the Fraser Show, Sarah Fraser Show, back with Rachel Yucatel from Misunderstood. I'm so excited.
Oh my God, Rachel, it's so good to see you. We had to take like the 4th of July off. Did you have a good 4th? Were you down in Florida?
I will say I did not have a great 4th. I'm not going to get into that. I'll tell you offline what happened, but I went away on a trip and didn't have a great time. So never doing that again. We need to do an episode on dating is what we need to do.
Oh my God, can we please?
Yes. Because that is where that story leads into bad dating choices. So,
All right, well, we're doing that next.
But did you have a nice vacation? I know you've been on vacation on and off for like 2 months now.
Everybody in my life says that. They're like, bitch, how have you been on vacation for a month? It's really crazy. I was in northern Michigan. So my husband is from outside Detroit, born and raised like West Bloomfield, Michigan. And, it's a very Midwestern thing. They all go to northern Michigan, like everybody that lives in southern Michigan, and they vacation on the lakes, right? Lake Michigan. So we go to this Sutton's Bay area, and their family, it was their 45th anniversary of doing it for 45 years. They have 50 family members now, all of our cousins, Dan's 2 brothers, their families. So it was so relaxing. It was really, really nice.
That sounds lovely. Well, since you've been off having a relaxing time, the world has sort of fallen apart. So maybe we should start there with what's going on in the political atmosphere of the United States. So this weekend, obviously, as everyone knows, we won't get into all the details because everyone knows that there was an assassination attempt made. And now we are in the middle of the RNC going on. And, what are your thoughts? Also, the VP pick was announced. What are your thoughts on what is going on?
Isn't that wild? First of all, I was sitting eating dinner and, you see the notification that former President Trump, there's been an assassination attempt. I think the most fascinating part that I'm following is the CIA or Secret Service, I should say, like if they really didn't secure the perimeter correctly, where was the real mishap there? How was this guy allowed to climb up on that roof where people saw him carrying that AK or AR-15, sorry.
Yeah.
AR-15. I mean, to me, the security breach is the most wild thing. And how he was not assassinated, how he moved his head just in time is, I mean, truly unbelievable. So I've been glued to this. The shooter is kind of like a lot of these shooters, right? A loner, had political angst against both sets of Republicans and Democrats, was kind of an odd kid, unfortunately was bullied, which we know, is horrific and people are trying to address.
Well, as of this morning, I just want to stop you just to play devil's advocate. I was watching a news show this morning where it was a former teacher, someone that knew him, and said in his opinion he was not bullied, but did say that there was some case to be made that this had nothing to do with being political, that they had now seen, some sort of warning that came out on a gaming platform where he said on July 13th, I will be, coming out, wait for it, something like that. And I think he was just, in this guy's opinion, he was saying, I think that he was just trying to make a place in history, make some waves. And he didn't know how to do it. And this, at the end of the day, is how he chose to do it. So that's kind of interesting. It shows that he wasn't necessarily against the Republicans, against President Trump, former President Trump. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. What I want to know is the conversations they're having with the father who bought the gun. So, in the past now, we've seen 2 parents sent to jail for their son's behavior in the last year and the shooting that he did. But that person shot and killed a number of people. So I'm curious the responsibility of the father.
Great questions. I think that is so poignant. I mean, if the father knew for a fact that this guy was mentally ill, I think the father should be held responsible. Can you prove the father was aware that this kid had been on various sites and made threats? I mean, yeah, then I think he absolutely should.
Well, I don't know, though, if it's about him being mentally unstable or anything. I mean, I don't think he was mentally unstable. I think that he held down a job and seemed like a stable kid who was just a little bit different, let's say. But I think the father should, whatever, be held responsible for buying a gun that was accessible to to someone else, whether it's his child or anyone who could get into a locked space. I mean, I don't really understand why people are allowed to buy or the need to buy that kind of a gun. So that's to me what I don't understand. And it was his fault for buying it and letting it get into the hands of someone who attempted to kill the former president and maybe the next president of the United States. I think that's insane. So I do think the father has to be held accountable somehow.
And it is wild that the dad was a licensed behavioral therapist, specialization in rehab. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
Like, you
wild.
think he would know. Yeah. Yeah, I think look, the whole gun issue is so difficult, right? I mean, I'm with you. I don't know why we have these sort of high-powered rifles that
Yeah.
shoot multiple stocks, but
Yeah.
I'm with you. I would ban those in a heartbeat, but
Yeah. Did you watch
very controversial.
Yes. Did you watch the JP Vance's speech last night?
Yes, JD Vance. I
JD, sorry.
watched some of it. I did not watch all of it, and I've been reading a lot about JD Vance. Maybe I had not been too familiar with him, obviously Ohio senator. Now I wanna really read his book, The Hillbilly Eulogy, which
Yes.
I've not read. No, but I guess I'm more impressed with his resume the more I read about him. I'm sort of shocked a little bit that President Trump picked him. He's been critical of President Trump in the
Mhm.
past.
Mhm.
And I actually did think, and maybe nobody cares about this anymore. I don't know. I thought that President Trump was going to pick a person of color. I thought it was going to be Tim Scott. Thought it was going to be Nikki Haley. I thought it was because then I just thought it would be like a slam dunk that he was going to win. But a lot of my friends that I talk to that are independents, conservatives, Democrats, a lot of people feel like at this point it doesn't matter. He survived that assassination attempt. Biden's a mess. He's already
Yeah.
got it. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on him?
I don't know that a VP pick has ever, put them over the edge, helping them, or hurting them. I think it just like adds a little bit to what they're bringing to the table. I don't know. In the history books, do you ever really remember VPs? I mean, sometimes like you do because they've made a little bit of a mark, but like for the most part, I don't know that they push it over the edge. It's interesting. I didn't. I didn't know what to make of him after the assassination attempt when I heard him basically suggest that it was Biden's fault. And then I thought, oh, here we go. They're going to try to, bring this into the court of law, blame him, try and throw him in prison, whatever it is. It was going to be something really nasty, which I think is a stretch, to say that it is Biden's fault for what this kid ended up doing and deciding to do. So I didn't like that. And I thought the tone of it was really aggressive. Whereas when you look at Trump right now, I can't wait to hear what Trump has to say tonight because he seems toned down. Now, it might just be because he's not on stage speaking. He seems, I don't know if the word is tired, toned down, a different person. He definitely seems more humble to me, but it'll be interesting what comes out of his mouth. But anyways, for JD Vance, when he made his speech last night, I was pretty intrigued. I didn't know anything about him. And personally, I thought it was very well written. I thought he did a very good job when he spoke about himself, his history, with his family's history
Yeah.
with addiction. I thought that made him more relatable. So I think they did a good job. It'll be interesting to see what happens, when the Democrats have a chance to do this in
I mean,
a month or so.
I do have to agree with you. Now, a lot of people that are critical of JD Vance are like, the dude's a major flip flopper. He hated Trump. Really only recently became likable to the Trump family with his objection to funding the war in Ukraine. But I do like his story. I mean, he is the American dream, right? I mean, he came from very, very humble beginnings. They did not have much money in Ohio. And, he obviously super smart, pulled himself up by the bootstraps. I believe he's like Yale educated, worked
Yeah.
for a hedge fund or venture capitalist. And I mean, he really made something of himself, right? So that is the American dream. And he seems to, I appreciate that because he knows how hard a lot of Americans, the struggle, the addiction struggle, it's very tough out there for a lot of people. And a lot of these politicians that have a lot of money, were raised in a lot of money. It's very hard to relate to that. So I do like that about him.
Well, I think it's interesting that you said he flip-flopped though. Like, haven't you noticed everyone has flip-flopped? I mean,
Yeah.
all these people that stood up last night, all these people that are coming out for him were people that were really heavily against Trump. especially in the last year when they were going against him.
Yeah, sure. Nikki Haley being a big one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Who got a lot of praise. Yeah, I mean, they're all the Republicans fall in line, you
Yeah.
know? So,
So
yeah.
anyways, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. I am a little bit, I don't know. I feel a little bit uneasy about what's going to happen in this country, and I don't really know why, but I am more open to hearing more people's sides. I will tell you that.
I am so fascinated because I really can't get a sense of. I mean, a lot of people say to me like Trump is winning by a landslide. Now I live in California, right? So most people here are not voting for Trump. Um, I'm curious about people's opinions too. And then I don't know if you saw this. It was kind of a breaking story, like as we just came on, but apparently they're saying that Biden could drop out this weekend in
Yeah,
a new
I did see that.
bombshell report. You have top Democrats, I believe, including Chuck Schumer, who are now saying to him, like, you have to step down. But it's like, wh-
I
who
think that's the only way the Democrats have a shot. I really do. I don't think, although you have seen, listen, there have been a ton of people that have had to resign or gotten fired over the last week about their reactions to this assassination attempt, saying things like, "Oh, too bad he missed," or whatever. So there's a ton of people still out there saying, "I'd rather vote for somebody in a body bag than vote red." So who really knows? I don't know that polls mean anything. We've seen that in the past, that all of a sudden something we thought was going to happen didn't happen. So it'll be very interesting to see. And there are people that, are still really divided, really aggressive about it. So I just wish the level of hate would come down. Honestly, I have stopped talking to so many friends. I feel like I'm in this little bubble in Florida right now. I have stopped talking to so many people and like finding new people because of how aggressive people have become regarding politics.
wow.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a
Where
lot.
I have one last question on the political thing because I know we have a lot of topics today. But what do you think Biden will really step down? He also has COVID. Do you think he'll step down? And if he does, who are they gonna put in his place?
Well, I just had Sean Spicer on my show recently, the
Yes.
former White House press secretary, who says he will absolutely not step down. Now, this was last week. So now that he has COVID, it's like one more step in people being like, oh my God, come on. And he's taking himself out of the race right now, kind of where he has to go home to Delaware and recuperate and quarantine or whatever. Listen, I think the only chance that people have is for him to step down. And I think from what I'm reading, he's now more open to it for the sake of, quote unquote, for the sake of the country, for democracy, to give someone a chance to win. Now, I think in talking to Sean, the next rite of passage would then be right now to Kamala Harris. There are some other people that people could put up to be the nominee, but I think they would create a free for all, is what he explained, where there's too many people, not enough, it's too chaotic to start campaigning now for that role, so to speak. So it really would be Kamala. And then for her, I think it would be important to decide who the VP pick would be. I think that would be, a really big push because people don't think she's strong. People don't like her. So she has to find someone that's really likable. So that's just my opinion. But I do think it'll happen. I didn't think that as
Really?
of last week. I do think it as of today. What do you think?
I I I actually think he'll stay in it because I just don't think Kamala can even win. I don't even know who they could possibly. First of all, they can't run Gavin Newsom because they're both from the same state.
Mhm.
So he can't be her VP. They're not gonna what they ought to do, unfortunately, is get rid of Kamala and get Gavin in there because Gavin could go toe to toe with former President Trump. However, I don't think Gavin could win because here in California, he just signed this law that's going to allow schools, they do not have to tell the parents of a minor. It's insane in California that their child is changing gender. So your child can go to school as a girl, say I'm now Bobby, but the school, the teachers, they legally cannot tell you. Is that not insanity?
I
I
don't
mean,
even understand that. That makes no sense.
of course, if the child says, "My parents are homophobic and they're violent, and if they find out that I am trans, they will hurt me," then of course the school has an obligation to not disclose. But to most parents like yourself, you're a great mother, myself, great parent. I wanna know what's going on with my child, right? You wanna know if they're being bullied. You wanna know if they're the bullier. You wanna know, are there fights breaking out in the school? Can you imagine?
Well, I guess they're trying to say it's a personal
Crazy.
choice of the child. Is that what they're trying to say? I don't even get that. But how do you not know that's happening with your child because they go to school and that's like their freedom and they can become this other identity? I will tell you in New York, I live in Florida now. I lived in New York City and my daughter originally went to an all-girls school, and in older grades, there was a case, there was only like 12 kids in their class. It was a private school. 4 of the kids had transitioned, and one was like now Max, one was now Rocky, whatever it was. And they thought it was a fad. The parents got upset. They didn't know why the school would allow it to happen. Now, I didn't get involved in it because my daughter was young at the time and it didn't affect me. But like I've seen that happen. And I did hear that one of the parents did not know that at all and was completely unaware that that's what the child wanted to do. So I find that odd though, that you don't know.
Well, I'm from Maine, and there is currently in Damascotta, Maine, which is close to where my mother lives, there is an elementary school being sued because the guidance counselor was helping an 11-year-old transition and getting them hormones unbeknownst to the parents.
Well, I think
So
that's
is
wrong.
that not, I mean, is that, of course it is. Like, I mean, please, I hope the parents win millions from this school. They
Yeah.
should.
Yeah.
Gavin just signed that into office. I mean, I don't know. I think Gavin wants to wait 4 years because I think if President Trump gets reelected, people will be very, the division will continue, and then that will kinda tee him up. But I don't know, I mean, I'm not a political analyst. I've spent many years in DC and around people that are much smarter in politics. I just
Mhm.
don't see how Kamala could win. I just don't see it, but
Well, don't you think she could win? There's a better chance for her to win than Joe Biden.
no. I
Mhm.
actually think it's the same. Yeah, I
All
do.
right, well, we will see what happens, I guess, and we'll have to follow up in a week or 2 to see if there's been any movement on it. But,
Yeah, yeah.
honestly, I just think it's becoming like a pop culture story. It's not even a political story anymore to see what happens. It's really insane.
It's wild. The next
Really
few
insane.
months are wild. We are living through insane history. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Crazy.
Okay, so let's go into some other topics. I know you brought up the fact to me that Karen Reed is now selling or looking to sell her house. Karen Reed is the woman who was accused of killing her police officer boyfriend a few years ago, and now there was a mistrial, and she is sort of in limbo right now until the 22nd of July when they're going to go back and decide what is going to happen with this any further. So you're kind of obsessed with this story. What do you think?
Well, thanks to you. You got me in it, and now all vacation, I just have been past month, I've been reading all about Karen Reed.
Yeah.
By the way, I know we were off, but what did you make of when Karen Reed and her attorney were caught outside of Smith& and Wolinski's in, or I think it was Smith& and Wolinski's or a
Mhm.
steakhouse in Boston, and he had his arms like
Canoodling.
canoodle. What did you make of that?
Well, I thought it was inappropriate. I think she's very unlikable, so I think that that just added to it. I don't know why the lawyer or her, well, I can see why she would, but I don't know why the lawyer would engage in that kind of thing. They're definitely very close. And then you hear this all the time. Remember with Casey Anthony, they said that she was sleeping with Jose Baez or one of her attorneys. I think you become very close with somebody who is fighting for your life. So I can see why she finds him attractive, but
Oh, yeah,
it's
he's
completely inappropriate. So, and he's married, on top of it. So, I don't think that looks good for anybody, but maybe it was just a moment, we don't know the context of it. It could have been a moment where he was pulling her back or he was just hugging her from behind. Does look like his hand is on her breast, but I don't
Has
know.
your attorney ever done that to you? I mean, come on.
No, they have not. They have very good boundaries. But and I've had female attorneys as well. But yeah, those male attorneys, I will tell you, you develop
Well,
a crush on them very quickly.
that's true. I have an entertainment attorney that I adore. I mean, he's never done that, but he's a little flirty. So, there you
Right.
go. But
Right.
they are, yeah. But it's a different. I'm not on trial for murder, so it's a little different. But
Right.
you know, I'm obsessed with Karen Reed. I can't wait to listen to your turtle interview. She is selling her house in Massachusetts, 30 miles outside of Boston, $880,000 or something. She's listing it at. Beautiful house.
Mhm. I don't know
They're
where
trying
she's living. There was a lot of stuff that I didn't understand about whose house she's at. Maybe she's living with a new boyfriend. I don't really know.
Yes.
It'll be interesting to see what happens because, her attorneys are making the motion to drop everything to, get her off. She was acquitted on 2 of the 3 counts. and they are trying to get the jurors potentially to come back in, have a conversation with the judge, because there was a lot of confusion as to why they did not tell the judge that they did acquit her on 2 of the 3 accounts. And if anything, she should just be tried on one thing, which is, I think, aggravated manslaughter, well, I'll have to look it up. But one thing that they still have her on, which they were
Okay.
deadlocked on.
So you've covered this story. What is your take? Do you think, and especially after, I love the turtle blogger. What's his, I'm saying it incorrectly. His
Turtle Boy.
Turtle Boy. Thank you.
Yeah.
After interviewing Turtle Boy, who like led the charge in her innocence, that's like who she should be sleeping with. But anyway, I mean,
That's what I thought. That's
I mean,
exactly what I thought. I asked him that if he was in love with her or if he was still friends with her, because he was friendly with her for a while. He is not speaking to her at the moment, and they were friends, but he said he was
oh,
never attracted to her. She was not his type. So,
oh, please.
listen, I can understand why she would want to sleep with him, though. Again, somebody
I
leading
would.
the charge, saying you're innocent, going after cops, getting arrested on your behalf, sort of, that's kind of hot. But
Yeah.
I digress for a second. I went into it thinking that she probably did kill him. Maybe she didn't know it because she was wasted. Maybe she sort of knew it, did not do it on purpose, left. Um, anyway, after doing the interview with him, I believe him. He laid out all the evidence, and while I may not find her likable, and I thought she was a terrible representative of somebody who should feel very humbled and, be going to court not like a celebrity, and stop, making faces and wincing and smiling, and someone, it's been lost in the circus that this guy lost his life, right? So she should be very somber, but I don't think she did it. I think that there was a cover up, and I came to that conclusion based on Turtle Boy and him being on my show for sure.
And I do think that the officer that she's accused of killing her boyfriend, right? There was never any like indication in his body that he'd been run over, right? Wasn't that like the biggest thing? Yeah, that's like the hardest thing to prove, right? Because
Yeah,
there's
if
no.
you had been run over at the speed, and again, I don't want to get into all the details because we could be here for an hour, but apparently they said she backed up into him and 24 miles an hour, and there was a party going on with music that was not loud, and they would have seen a car backing up very fast, fast enough that this guy would have been completely battered and bruised, and they would have heard it. They would have seen the body fly, miles, and not miles, excuse me, feet. And, it just didn't seem plausible to me. And also he had all these different scratches, the dog bites on his arm, and the Fitbit or whatever it was showed him going up and down the staircase within the house. The people said that he had never been in the house. There was all sorts of cover-ups and lies said by the people in the house, and a lot of people weren't even interviewed. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. So again, while I might not like her very much, I actually don't think she's a killer.
That whole story is so sad, and his family, like, they've had so much tragedy in their family. I hope they get justice and we find out what happened, but I guess it's very hard, right? The last question on this I'll ask you is, from what I've read, they really cannot determine the cause of death, right? The toxicology report, right? There's no.
I think that they did determine the cause of death, but I don't know, exactly what it is. It could have been freezing in the snow at that point. I think that he was injured enough that he took a blow to his head. I think that is what happened. But, it wasn't like there was a ton of blood and he bled out. I don't know. I'm very confused by that as well.
Right?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
It is. Okay.
All right. So moving on.
right.
Did you watch the national anthem that was sung during the what was it? The home run derby the other day?
MLB home run derby. What was her name? Ingrid.
Well, I've never heard of her. So
Country star. I'd never heard of her either. My country
not
friend.
gonna be a country star that much longer, I don't think.
Well, she's headed to rehab. Okay, so I actually thought the rehab was like a good. I thought the rehab was.
Well, I would be headed to rehab too if I were her. But I think that excuse, oh, I was drunk and I'm going to rehab, is reminiscent of like 2 years ago or a couple of years ago when men would cheat and then go into sex rehab. I think that's just an excuse. I think that she, something was going on. I think she was on maybe pills because she doesn't read as drunk. And, I don't know why you would get drunk when you're doing something I don't know. I don't get it. But I don't necessarily believe that what happened was because she was just drunk.
nerves. Okay, so it's so funny. I actually believed this. Ingrid Andress is her name. Country star, says she's going to rehab. They're calling it the worst rendition ever. And, do you remember hearing Fergie? Did you ever hear Fergie's at, like, an NBA game? Her national anthem, that was horrible. And I
No,
think
but wasn't that because her earpiece was out?
yeah, it was like her earpiece was off. So I thought that Ingrid was gonna say that her earpiece was off. But then I thought the drunk was pretty bold because I feel like, she's young. I don't know. I guess in that moment I could relate to that. Like I used to do like a lot of public events, radio events. And actually for one season, I was the in-stadium co-host for the Washington Nationals. Like,
Oh,
how
how
they
fun.
so I often would try to get drunk, mostly because the job was awful. But then I could see myself doing this. So I'm like, yeah, I could see her having a problem. I think you're right. Look like it could be mixed with pills. Like
Well,
she seems so off.
yeah, and I think that this allows her, whoever in her crisis management team told her to say this, I think was correct because this allows her to not have it be about her skill. Like she could still come back as being a singer. She could go to rehab and then everyone will be looking at her to see the kind of comeback she has after the fact. George, you want to play a second of her rendition?
For the land of the free and the home of the brave.
If anything, I might have said that it was a joke and that I was getting paid $1 million to embarrass myself. And this was part of like, what's that show? Improbable Jokers. What are those four best
Impractical Jokers.
Impractical
Yeah.
Jokers? Yeah, I would have probably said that. It seemed like a joke, didn't it?
It really did. By the way, she's actually 32. She's not that young. I mean, you could still have clearly you can have a problem with alcohol at 32, but I was thinking she was like 25 and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I would have done that at 25." Like I would have mixed probably I would have like taken 2 Adderall and like I would have been too way off. You know what I'm saying? Like I would have hit the Adderall and the alcohol and then I would have gotten up there and been completely off. So, but 32, girl. But maybe this is her, maybe this is her moment. She'll figure it out. Like
Well, it's definitely a rock bottom for sure.
a
If
lot
you're
of
a
people
singer,
agree
that's
with
your rock bottom.
Yeah, a lot of people agree with you because I was starting to make jokes about it on my Instagram, then I felt like shit 'cause I was like, "Oh, she's going to rehab," and then people were like, no, this is such a
Yeah.
lame excuse." Okay.
Yeah.
Great, that was
All
bad.
right. Let's move on. So another thing in we'll talk about pop culture for a second.
Mhm.
Christina Hall and her husband, Josh Hall, are getting a divorce. He filed for divorce after 3 years of marriage. What I found interesting about this is that this woman has been married 3 times to quite interestingly handsome, famous enough men. And I just think it's odd. I remember the first time she got divorced, she became popular because she was on like a home show
Yeah,
with Tarek. Is that how you pronounce his name?
yeah.
Al Muset. What's his last name?
I know, it's like El Mossad,
Yeah,
yeah.
something like that I can't
Very
pronounce.
yeah.
Handsome guy. They did a show together. They got divorced. He married kind of her lookalike from Selling Sunset, Heather.
I guess.
She married Ansed. Is that how you pronounce his
Mhm.
last name? I can't pronounce anybody's name today. Very
Okay.
good looking guy who she went to him immediately right after she got divorced from Tarek. They married. They were married from 2018 to 2021. I believe they had a child also. And she had a child with the first one as well. And then now he moved on and went and is living with his girlfriend, Renee Zellweger. I can't pronounce her last
Zellweger,
name
yeah.
either.
Zellweger. I love
I
you.
promise I'm not drunk, everybody. And then, it's so interesting to me. And then she went and married this guy, Josh, not even like a year after she divorced Aunt. And I remember watching, I thought she was really pretty and interesting. So I used to follow her a little bit. And I remember when I saw she announced that she had this new boyfriend, the comments in the comment section were like, girl, you need time for you. And the next thing you know, they're getting married. And I was like, oh God, well, I hope this is going to work out. Well, now we see that it hasn't. So I don't know. I feel like she must have some love addiction issues that she probably needs to work out, but she's like a beautiful girl, so men are attracted to her. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yes, yes to everything you're saying. Isn't it crazy? The first thing I thought about is like, how does this bitch have like a nickel left? Like, because this guy wants spousal support. I don't know
Yeah.
if Ant wanted any money. Probably not now that he's with Renee. But I feel like there was a financial thing with she and Ant too. I don't know. Something about her is like, don't you feel like she's so gorgeous? She's talented, but I bet she's crazy as hell. Like, I'm sorry.
Crazy as hell.
I
That's the kind of girl that gives us girls a bad name because she's just crazy bitch. But I love her. She's hot.
I mean, to me, she'd be like like your best friend.
Yeah.
To me, I would like love to be friends with her. I feel like I'd love her, but she seems like addicted to men, addicted to love. You know what? There's so many people that love being in love. They
Mhm.
love the whole like the marriage, the whole beginning of it. But if she were your girlfriend and she announces she's getting married to a fourth time, would you even buy her a wedding gift? I'd be like, oh,
No.
no. I'm like, girl,
No.
Christina, no, bitch.
I'd probably reuse my bridesmaid gown from the last one because it probably still fit. It was so recent. You know what I mean?
She's but she's it's comical, it's sad for her, and I think, like, 2 days before he filed for divorce, they had some In Touch magazine cover that was, like, the secret to keeping our marriage great, and then he
Well,
filed.
yeah. And now in 2025 and next year, she is on a competition show against her ex-husband, Tarek, and Heather with herself and her current boyfriend, her husband, who she's getting a divorce from, Josh, called The Flip Off. So that'll be interesting to see how they do that because I don't know if they've watched the divorce unfold, watched this sort of meltdown unfold. So I guess that'll have some ratings when it comes out. Or I wonder if they'll have to cancel it.
She's so good at getting ratings.
Really good.
Yeah,
I wonder if she's good at putting houses together. I mean, I don't know anything about that skill of hers.
I mean, it looks like it on the show, but then, all these shows, I think, even including I love Chip and Joanna Gaines. I think that people say, they stage your house for TV, but then they take all the furniture and everything back, or you have to buy
Terrible.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Which of course is like, insanely expensive. And then a lot of times these shows end up getting called out because they do really shitty quick makeovers.
Mm,
So it's like everything's really cheap. Sometimes. I don't know if her show has been accused of that, but
right.
certainly these home makeover shows in the past have. But she's good. She's good
Yeah.
at she is definitely fascinating. She's awesome for television, reality TV, but a lot of turmoil. Oof.
Yeah. A lot of turmoil. Okay. One topic I want to cover because it just came out really in the last 24 hours was this story about Terrell Davis and his wife,
Mm.
former NFL player. He was on United. The FBI removed him, wrongfully handcuffed him for tapping on a flight attendant, a male flight attendant, I believe, and asking him for some ice for his child. And so now he's gone on CNN. He's making his rounds, talking about how he felt racially profiled in that. Now, what are your thoughts before I tell my story?
My thoughts on a lot of racial profile stories are I'm not black, so I don't know what that is like.
Mhm.
Certainly been discriminated against for being a woman. I worked in radio, which is like the most sexist business. So, but I don't know what it's like to be black. So if he felt that it was racist, maybe it was.
Mhm.
It certainly was weird that, the Terrell Davis, I didn't know who he was. He and his wife loved the interviews that they've done. They seem incredibly sensible people.
Totally.
So he's not out here like trying to get attention. I think what happened to him is absolutely true. And United did the right thing, right? They came right out. They were like, this is not the experience we want flyers to have. We've removed this flight attendant. They've been fired. And good, they should. I mean, that is so weird. And it is funny. I was just flying back from Michigan. I know that the stewardess were great. The airline people were really good. Actually, it was more the passengers were really awful.
Did you fly
So,
on United?
no Delta.
Okay.
But I've flown United, many times. And I
United, I think historically has had more problems with people than the others. I mean, I read a story a couple years ago about a flight attendant who made someone put their dog in the overhead compartment and the dog died. I mean, I don't understand like what is going on. If I was ever on a flight and I saw something like that, I would speak up. But it's terrible. I totally appreciate the story that Terrell and his wife are going on the news and telling. I think it's terrible what happened to him, and he does, like you said, seems like a credible,
yeah, very.
sensible man. And I think the way United handled it was appropriate. But I will say, like you mentioned, we don't fall in that category, but we are women. And also, there was a time after COVID, or at the tail end of COVID, where masks, you still had to wear them on a flight. Everybody was getting angry. And I think it really turned the attitude of flight attendants against passengers. And there was a level of heightened anger and awareness, whatever it was. But there was also heightened awareness about the white Karen. And I think that that was a very dangerous thing for white women, because we got called out for all sorts of crazy shit because of our white counterparts who were assholes. So I was on a flight one time with my daughter, and there was a woman behind me sitting on the aisle, and she was overweight. And two people came and sat next to her in the middle and the window seat. And she was like lopping into that woman's seat. And they kept saying to her, you need to put your seatbelt on, and then would walk by and be very rude. And we were all wearing masks. Okay. So the woman, a couple times, everyone was seated now and was saying, we were probably, it might have been JetBlue. We were in maybe the fifth or sixth row because we weren't that far. And she kept saying to the woman, she tried to get up, and the stewardess said, lady, sit down. And she still couldn't tie her. She needed a seatbelt extension.
Oh, yeah,
So she
sure.
kept saying, excuse me, I need a seatbelt extension. And I turned around and I started to feel very uncomfortable for her. I was almost embarrassed for her that she had to announce this a couple times. I need a seatbelt extension. This woman, by the way, was overweight, and she happened to be African American. So I felt very upset for her. So I said to the stewardess in my mask, I think you need to go. I got up, and she was like, lady, sit down. And I said, excuse me, this woman is having a difficult time. You need to do something about that. You need to go back there and give her a seatbelt extension. Well, next thing you know, I sit back down in my seat, and people get on the flight and ask me to leave to have a conversation. So we go outside of the airplane, and I'm like, what is going on? And they're like, you were making racial comments about the woman behind you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I said, I was feeling bad for her. And I was asking this terrible woman who's a stewardess, who's ignoring her and humiliating her in front of everyone and making her feel heavy, that I was telling her she needs to go back there quietly and give her the seatbelt extension. And I said, maybe she didn't hear me because I had the mask on, but she wasn't, listening to me. She wasn't listening to anybody. And she was just in a heightened state of anger and awareness. They finally let me back on. My daughter was horrified. My daughter might've been, I don't know, 10 or something. And she was like, Mom, we could have gotten kicked off, and you could have gotten arrested because you were just arguing, like, stay in your seat and don't say anything. So my point is that I think that was during the time of like when we were considered all Karens, but I was trying to help the woman. But I noticed a sense of anger and obnoxiousness in the flight attendants, and I see it all the time. I really do, and I don't like it. So that's my comment.
Okay, I wonder what it is. Like, we should have some flight attendants on, because I wonder what it is about. And I do think there's something about flying, don't you think? The air, I don't know what it is, but the airplane makes people nuts. I mean, right? Have you seen all kinds of things? I've been on a plane with a woman that punched a guy in the face, and police showed up after she claimed she had Tourette's. I was like, bitch, I am out of here. I had, my son was like, I think a year old. Maybe a little over a year old. I was like, I'm moving seats. She was crazy. She could have clocked me. She like clocked the guy right next to us.
Oh,
Then, I've been on where the guy was like so hammered, so high on drugs. They had to come and remove him. They couldn't even wake him up. Yeah, it's something about the airlines, I
well, I
think.
think people are crazy. I think 80%, Dr. Drew used to tell me
Oh, yeah,
80% of people have something wrong with them. And you don't,
80%?
yes, and you don't suffer fools gladly. So you have to be a little more patient, because you can't think that everyone is at a level playing ground of mental
Yeah,
acuity, right? Or, everyone has something going on in your life. You don't know what it is. So he was just like, you got to just realize that going forward. This was, of course, years ago when I was, with him all the time. So I do think that there are mentally unstable people. And when you're on a flight,
yeah.
you're with all sorts of people, and you're confined, and it could be very anxiety provoking for a lot of people. So I do think the airlines are a tough place for anyone, but I
Well,
don't like the level of aggression that flight attendants have. I get it. I get that they feel like things can go awry, and there probably was so much terrible stuff that happened when they had to ask people to wear their masks, and they needed assistance from the authorities. But I think stuff like that is terrible. And I know everyone's all nuts about their personal space these days. You can't even be touched. But to say that he hit him, I mean, it was totally ridiculous. I hate when people start for nothing. I really do. I think it's terrible. I'm
No,
happy the guy was removed. The flight attendant was removed from his job.
he should have been. He should have been. And I will say this in defense of flight attendants. I think like a lot of industries, right? They're trying to cut their salaries and ask them to work more. And when you are on an airplane, I mean, it is a huge safety responsibility. What those flight attendants, then they're also basically asked to be, your server, like on in a restaurant, but their biggest thing is trying to keep you safe. So, and we are very lucky and I think very spoiled in this country, right? And yes, a lot of people are struggling, but a lot of people in this country do really well. Their kids are very rich. There's like a ton of money in this country. So there's a sense of entitlement from a lot of Americans of like, for all different backgrounds, I think now, do you know who I am? And you should wait on me and all these things. So I love what you said about like coming with understanding. I try to do the same thing. And I like what Dr. Drew said. Like that's why I always fly early morning because I'm the best from the hours of like 6 to 2 p.m. And then after that. So it's like, what can I do to do my part? And I try more and more to realize like people, they have a huge responsibility. And if they're not being paid extremely well, like I think they were 15, 20 years ago, meanwhile, I think the TSA said like 4th of July, they served 3 million people, highest number. I mean, these airlines are making an atrocious amount of money. Yeah, it's on both sides, but I liked the way that they handled it. United handled it. I thought that was excellent. I thought Terrell Davis and his wife have been great on the story that they were giving. And certainly people are still racist. So it absolutely could have been that. Could have been a combination of things. The guy was racist. Also, maybe he's just fed up with his job. I don't know. But
Right.
I like the way
Definitely had a bad day.
Yeah. I liked it.
All right. So I'm curious what you're such a pro in the reality TV and pop culture world. What are the things that you're following or what are some shows you're watching?
Well, I'm watching Welcome to Plathville. Have you ever
No, but everyone's talking about this. I don't even get it. I've seen that on your post. Was that the woman that lives in like a boat?
She's not living in a boat. But this show, first of all, if I were advising people to watch this show, just skip the first 5 seasons. The first 5 seasons were so boring, okay? But it was kind of boring to the point you wanted to watch it because it was so bad it was good. Meaning it's about this Plath family in Cairo, Georgia. And Kim and Barry Plath used to be married. They're going through a divorce. They're both like hooking up with other people. Barry's like jacked as hell, going through a makeover. Now he's hot. Oh my God, you and Barry Plath should you would like, actually, no, he's not attractive enough for you. Anyway, but he's very nice. He's very nice. So, but they raised their kids in this uber religious homeschool. They didn't even tell their kids, the boys and the girls knew nothing about, they didn't even know what a period was. They had no idea what a tampon was.
Is it a real thing or it's a scripted
real thing? No, a real thing. And these kids were raised in like 2018, 2019. You're thinking to yourself, all right, maybe this is early aughts. This was like 5 years ago. They didn't know what a cell phone was. They didn't know what Coca-Cola was. The parents never drank, nothing. But the mom, Kim, always wanted them to do a family band and was obsessed with celebrity. So she, on a whim, ends up like emailing TLC and is like, I have 11 children. And they did have this horrible tragedy where Kim ran over like one of her 2-year-old children and the baby died.
What?
Yes. So
was she arrested?
No. Like, I think it was truly an accident. She had like these 10 kids running all around.
It doesn't matter. Don't you get arrested for even accidental things? I mean, her parenting skills don't sound great if she's running over children and her own.
Well, she was never arrested. Very traumatic. I didn't even think about that. I just thought it was truly an accident. So they pitched this to TLC. TLC like instantly picks it up, and the first season was a hit. And their oldest son, Ethan, is married to this beautiful girl, Olivia Plath, right? She's so stunning. I think she's one of the most attractive women on reality TV. And from the beginning, Olivia also comes from this super religious family, but begins to kind of get a cell phone and research and wants Ethan to live away from the parents. And so that starts the beginning of them like realizing like the way we were raised, was this right? Or were we so sheltered that their parents really held us back? Fast forward 5 seasons, all the kids have gone bananas. Okay. So Ethan and Olivia are divorcing. Kim and Barry are divorcing. Kim's hooking up with a man down in Florida, now lives on a fucking boat. I mean, she's drinking alcohol, making margaritas at 4:00. These people have
That was
gone.
the boat we saw on your Instagram? The
Yeah.
tiny boat that's the size of my office? That was that's where she chose to go? Oh my goodness, okay. Well, okay, so this is why I
It is
think,
crazy, this
okay, so
show.
everyone should maybe watch this, maybe not,
So
but
good.
I will say the next time we get together, I do think we should do a relationship dating talk because what's going on in this world is really nuts. You're talking about stories like this, and, I am someone who loves, let's say, my 600-pound life. Did you ever watch this?
Love, obsessed.
I'm genuinely serious. Why is everyone on my 600-pound life married and I'm single? I don't get it. I don't
Because
understand.
it's an enabler situation. It's
I
a
wanna be enabled. I'm
fetish,
fine with being enabled.
and there's no way. You are so independent. There is no way. You have
Well,
thoughts of your own. You're beautiful. You've made your own money. You have this gorgeous daughter. There's no way. Like that's probably
but
part of
it
your
seems
problem.
odd to me that people who are relatively normal, like me, cannot find someone who is even worthy of having a flirtation on the phone with. I legitimately am not talking to one person on the phone right now, like flirting with them, because I'm so repulsed by everyone. I've been on so many terrible dates. The last date I went on, this guy sat there and sweat was dripping down his forehead, down his nose, down his neck, and he wouldn't wipe it. And I just was like, how am I going to ever have sex with this person? That's not happening. So to get into a different,
Was this
our
Rudy?
next-
Was this Rudy Giuliani? Was his tan like? Was his hair dye?
no, but Rudy's taken also. Rudy
He
is
is?
dating someone. Yes, who I know. And, God, I just don't understand why I'm going to grow old alone. So maybe that should be our next
There's
conversation.
no way that you are. There's
We
no
need to go through my Hinge and my Bumble and maybe do a call to action on Rumble about anyone
way.
who
It's
is
just the
single.
guys that you're choosing. That's it. It has to be the guys that you're choosing.
I must be a terrible shredder at this point in my life. That I was on with Patty Stanger, Millionaire Matchmaker. She called me a shredder back then. This might have been, I don't know, 15 years ago. I must be a shredder now. So if anyone wants to fix me, please enable me. I'm right here.
Okay. What do you think truly? What do you think it is? Like, do you feel like it's something in you? Do you feel like you just keep picking the same guy? Because
No.
okay, so what do you think it is?
I'm not picking the same guy. I give a chance to literally everyone, and I always regret that I gave a chance. Obviously it's something with me. I mean, everybody is able to get a boyfriend or married but me. So, but I have not come across anyone that impresses me in the slightest. I mean, honestly, I have a better chance of meeting somebody at Home Goods, which by the way, I'm obsessed with at the moment.
Well, he'll be gay. You can't go to Home
Oh,
Goods.
no. The manager there is a gay. I sit in there with my iced tea and I sit on those chairs checking them out. I could be there for an hour having a conversation with him. Clearly, I'm not going to date the guy from Home Goods.
Wrong place. You can't be in a Home Goods trying to meet a guy. You got to go see my therapist. Robin Mize is the person. Have you made a list? Have you made a list of things that you want in your partner? And do you look
No,
at that
should
list?
I?
Yes, because I will tell you, my dad died when I was like 14, right? So I attracted older men. To this day, I do. I still do. And I think you and I share this in common. I love an
love
older
older men.
rich
My
man.
father
Like,
died when I was 15 as well. So I get that.
I love if there's an old rich man in the room, like we will find each other. You know what I mean? Like there is something about that. But I kept dating these guys 15 years older, 18 years older. And I'm like, so I was 28, they're 45, they're 50. I'm like, I am going to, if I do this, when I had a girlfriend marry a rich older guy, and she said to me, Sarah, when you marry for money, you work for it every day. And I had such a panic attack when I heard that because I was like, I don't want to live like that. I want my own career. I want a guy that's young and can do things. And you date these older guys, they're old. Like
Yeah.
they golf.
Financial freedom is definitely the way to be.
It's
Honestly.
the way to be. But I kept attracting that guy, and I would go out for 4 hours on a date. And at the end, he'd be like, yeah, I'm getting divorced. I have 3 kids. And I knew at 28, 29, I was like, no offense to anybody listening. I did not want to marry a man that had been married with kids. I was like, at 28, 29, I'm too valuable to get. I don't want that baggage. I don't want to see an ex-wife every weekend. I don't want to be at soccer games, but I would keep attracting that guy. And so I would force myself. I didn't always have the balls to tell him to his face, but I would force myself at the end to text him and be like, I wish you well, but this isn't going to work. I just don't think that we're a match. the minute he would tell me he was divorced with kids, and I kept a list of things that I wanted in a guy: single, never married, college educated, my own age, someone that would support my career. And
Mhm.
I found my man sitting next to him on an airplane. And it took me a while because I'm definitely a grass is greener girl. And he was not rich. So that took me a second. I was like, oh, okay.
But
Well,
was it love at first sight? Like when you looked at him, were you like, wait?
no. And in fact, I wasn't even going to give him my phone number. And you talk about divine intervention. My girlfriend that I worked with came over and she's like, this man is good for you. I wouldn't even give him my phone number. I gave him an old business card. He emailed me. Then he put his phone number in the bottom of it. And it took me a while, but he always showed up for me when I left my last radio job. I took my severance package. I blew it launching my podcast. And I was like, I'm going to have to take a TV job. I'm going to have to take a radio job. And he was like, I will help support you. Like, we will figure this out. You can't go back because you will be so miserable. And that was the turning point for me. That was like 2 or 3 years into our relationship. I don't know how he stayed with me. But
And you fell more and more in love with him.
yeah, I'm more in love with him today than I even was when I met him. But we work on it. Like, we go to this emotional cognitive couples therapist. I'll give you her name every single month faithfully. We never miss. We've been doing that for 6 years. And I always say she's the reason we're married because she
Wow.
forces us to have conversations and slow down our marriage. And she's the one that, because I don't care what people say. There's very few people in this world that meet their soulmate and are forever in love and the marriage is easy. Like, really good relationships are fucking work. You're marrying someone that was raised in an entirely different household with
Yeah.
different values, even
Different
if you have similar-
experiences. Yeah.
to live with them day in and day out absolutely takes work. But the first thing you should do is make a list. What are the things in your heart that you really want? And then what are the things that you keep attracting that you don't want and you don't want? And the minute that man has that, you have to cut it off because that you're just wasting his time and yours. But you have to be really truthful with yourself. And I realize, like, most men that have a lot of money, it's like it's their way. And I'm not that woman. Like, I want it my way.
No, you're so right. And I do think that I said it opposite before, that I don't attract the same man. I think you're right. I do. I think I do. And I have to stop going for the same guy. So next time we speak, I will have my list.
I think you're quite independent but you probably attract, I know you attract, I mean, you're so stunning, and so I'm sure you attract a very wealthy guy, but they want it their way.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do every day.
That is very hard. Yeah, you're right. All right. Well, Sarah Fraser, it's always an honor and a pleasure. And, all of your listeners, or all of my listeners that don't know where they can find you, please let them know now where they can find you.
At the Sarah Fraser Show across all social platforms. The Sarah Fraser Show, I drop a podcast every single day. And for mine, at Rachel Yucatel, NYC on Instagram. Everybody needs to follow Misunderstood Podcast. Subscribe on Apple. I love your interviews. You're killing it. You get such good people.
Thank you.
Love you, my friend.
Yeah, please come back and we will talk to you guys and see you guys in a couple weeks. Take care.
Yes, bye. Thank you so much for listening to Misunderstood. I'm your host, Rachel Yucatel. Please be sure to subscribe to the show and give us a 5-star rating and review. You can support the show by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/misunderstood with Rachel Yucatel. Do you have ideas for the show or want to reach out? Email us at info misunderstoodpodcast@gmail.com. That's spelled MISS understood. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.